Hello, folks. How's everyone? Sorry. Hello. Gonna wait a little bit to let people come in. Nice to see new faces. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for joining me on my weekly IG Lives with a whole bunch of amazing folks that I've been inviting over the last couple of weeks, about 2-3 months at this point. Arely just request to join the live, and then I'll connect you in a little bit. So welcome everybody that's here. Before I start the conversation with Dr. Zimmerman, I wanted to kind of talk about some of the ideas that I have for some future IG lives, and open up the space to give me some ideas if you have anything that you want to talk about, anything that you want to hear, people that you'd want me to reach out to and maybe join us on the live. But I was thinking, elections are coming up, and it's a good time to start getting people to motivate them, right? To register to vote, to think about the different propositions, different candidates that are coming up in the different in people's states, in their local government. So I was thinking of in the next maybe not necessarily August, but come September, October, I would start reaching out to folks who do stuff like registration drives, and have people on here to talk to us about, what are some best ways to find information on candidates, on propositions, on new legislation that they need to vote on, and do this in English and in Spanish, really kind of help people start thinking about the election. And I know everybody's thinking about the election because of the president, if it happens in November, apparently. Hopefully we don't start claiming inherent powers to the presidency, can just move the election. But, all of these things are really important. So I want to start kind of thinking about ways in which I can use the IG Lives to do some kind of virtual get out the vote campaigning, So if that sounds interesting, let me know. If there's anything else you guys would like to talk about and think about, I'm also free for suggestions, or if you know somebody who you think would be a great person to chat with, send me a DM and let me know. Anyways, I want to get started with today's chat with Dr. Arely Zimmerman. I'm going to introduce her real quick and then I'll let her come on in. But Dr. Arely Zimmerman is an assistant professor in the Chicano Studies Department at Pomona College here in the Inland Empire. And I'm more than excited to chat with Arely about her work on media, youth, and social movement. So let's go ahead and welcome her to the chat. Hello.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here with you.
Yes, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I had told you this a long time ago, right? We need to set something up.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited that you are taking the time to do this, because I know it's always work to kind of get ready to start talking, but hopefully it's not too much, right?
I'll tell you something. Hi, Priscilla from New York. I'll tell you something. I have to be thanking you. I've really enjoyed actually these talks, because they're sort of a quick way to get to know folks and their work that, I've always been interested in, especially across discipline.
Right.
You and I see each other, at the Western, at the different political science events, but, we don't get to interact as much with other, across discipline. So
yeah,
it's really nice to be able to hop on here. And the other thing I was going to tell you is that it's really nice to change out of my pajamas, which I did.
Girl, you're telling me.
I was thinking, I was like, oh, I have this Instagram live, and I should change out of my pajamas just in case.
Yes,
So
no,
I
I
just
hear
put
you.
on a t-shirt. That's as far, and I combed my hair. So there you go. So
Girl, this is
thank
the
you.
only time I like spend some time to put on makeup.
The hair is
Literally.
getting so long, and it's just next time we talk, it's just gonna be even
Just
crazier.
like a whole bunch. Everybody's just gonna have really, really long hair
Yeah.
by the end of this pandemic, right? Like
Yes.
I know it's a true struggle, but I hear you. One of the times I think I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if you saw this one. I was on the live with Marcel, and Isel came in, and she was like, "I need you to do something," and I ran out, and it was like clear that I had on like a nice shirt or whatever, but then
And
I had
then
my pants.
yes,
And so I was like, damn it,
yes,
I'm gonna have to get up and everyone's gonna see
yes,
that I have on tights. But you know, that's just the world we live in now with Zoom and everything just kind
totally.
of being from the waist up, right? But at least I just wasn't in my underwear like that guy from
Yeah.
I think Good Morning America or something like that. Anyway, so super excited. We've known each other for
Don't say how long, girl. You're gonna date us.
a
You're
long
gonna date
time, but
us.
I've always told you this. You've always been like one of those people that I look up to tremendously ever since we took that one class with Professor Rocco on, well, it was political theory, right?
Something like that.
I
Yeah.
just remember I was like the only undergrad in that class, and I was like, well, I'm very lost here. I have no idea what's going on. But damn, Arely is hella smart. Like you were just talking, I was like, she's on point. Always, always on point. Um,
Latinas have to represent in those grad classes. I think we
yes,
were probably one of the few ones in there.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. And so it's always been like you're always somebody I look up to tremendously as
Thank
an
you so much.
academic. And so I'm really excited to talk about the work that you're doing right now. You know, we were talking about like I was like we can talk about memes if you want,
I
and
know.
or like
And
popular
then
culture, and you were like, yes,
yes.
that's my work, and I was like, oh, okay. I remember you doing stuff on social media, but I was like, when did the memes come in?
I know. I know.
Let's talk about
I can take you through.
everything.
I can take you through because this is definitely going to be an interactive thing. So the
Yeah.
folks that have joined, um, be ready to share some stuff on the
Yes.
comments.
Please.
Um, so yeah, absolutely. So I know that you were like kind of kidding with the memes, but as folks know, um, friends of mine or whatever, I'm like obsessed
Uh huh.
with meme culture, and in a way, it's interesting because it ties into kind of what we're doing right now, Claudia, which is we are on Instagram.
Yeah.
Instagram is the favorite platform, social media platform of Latinos,
Mm,
particularly young Latinos.
really?
And what we're doing here is really exemplary of what I want to talk about, which is, um, how is it that here we are, we're doing something as colleagues,
Yeah.
but as using a social media platform which we follow friends,
Right.
and in which we're both in our living room or whatever, in our
Yeah.
homes, in our
Right.
private, in our private sort of space,
Private sphere.
private sphere, and we're
Yeah.
using a kind of cultural platform to discuss, like you said, you were going to discuss elections, right,
Yeah.
in the fall, and so this is exactly what I want to talk about: is that how have these network forms of communication, um, what kind of opportunities does it give us? How
Yeah.
does it to engage politically and socially in our world? And then at the same time, how does it mediate and change the participation that we're
Yeah.
doing? And then thirdly, what are some of the harms and the potential pitfalls that come with being on social media and doing political work on social media?
Yeah.
So how I got there is actually, so it's not that. So in other words, us talking about memes is actually not very far from where we started
Mm-hmm.
when we took Ray Rocco's, theory classes.
Yeah.
Because the main thing that he would talk to us about and the things that we studied there was how to account for extra institutional or non-institutional forms of participation.
Participation.
All
Right.
right. And I think all of us, you, me, all the folks that were coming from different ideological positions, different backgrounds, we understood that, right?
Yeah.
We understood that our families, that our friends, um, engaged very much politically and socially and civically. And so and then we were
Mm-hmm.
confronted in our classes. to be told Latinos are apathetic, or Latinos don't
Right.
participate, or it's
Right.
Latinos' fault that our democracy is the way it is.
Right.
And this is right, and this is a discourse that repeats itself. It's almost like Groundhog Day,
Yeah.
right? Every
Yeah.
2 years, especially you that work on elections,
Yeah.
every 2 years, we are hearing the same
Discourse on, yeah,
discourse,
just like,
and about why Latinos are pathetic, what happened, why didn't they show up, and so
and then we talk about the sleeping giant when something happens, like
oh
he just
yeah,
popped out of nowhere.
exactly. So it's
Yeah.
obviously Cristina Beltran, and I still to this day make my students read that book or read excerpts of
Same.
that book. It's so important. But
Right.
I guess my point is to say that, like, where we were 10 years ago, or however long, when we were starting to explore these questions, we were in political science, and I'm sure you
Yeah.
get this a lot. How are you in politics? Hey,
Yeah.
shout out to my boy Amado from the Bay. Shout out to you. Um, so to me, my entry into looking at social media is actually right in my wheelhouse, if you will,
Right.
in terms of um, looking at, because my main kind of bread and butter, or what I'm really interested in, is Latino political participation,
Right.
particularly around questions of being undocumented, and social movements, and cultural politics. But
Right.
social media is right there, in
Yeah.
terms of this space that in which culture and politics intersect,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because my introduction into kind of the work that you do, because to some extent it ends up focusing a little bit on youth, right? Or primarily on what youth are doing. Um,
I think it's because, yeah, go ahead.
and so I was just going to say that, like, my introduction to what this looks like in politics was when I was working with Kathy, right, on her book on Democracy Remixed, which is, on the Black Youth Project, and her looking at, you know, when we pay attention to what youth are doing, can we get a different picture of what politics looks like for the Black
Totally.
community?
Totally.
And it's actually like centered primarily in the online sphere, right? And that
Yeah.
they're doing a lot of this work that, like you say, and you talk about, is not I don't want to get too ahead of myself in terms of the conversation, but like it's not a slacktivism or clicktivism, which you talk about in your work, right? But it's real activism that can look one dimensional online, but it's actually very multidimensional when you
It
look at like,
is.
the different spheres, right?
It is
So
multidimensional, and yeah, I think the question of, I think that the discourse that was happening 10 years ago, or when a lot of the interest in social media started off, was,
yeah,
oh, and I have some folks here that are, and you all are younger than me, the millennial generation, which was slacktivist, clicktivist,
yeah,
and a lot of the discourse was from folks that, to be honest with you, white males, white men,
yeah,
and some men of color, and an older generation, who was saying, look, like, if you don't have a hierarchical membership organization, or if you don't have these formal organizations, and this, like, one leader, very kind of masculine,
mm-hmm.
heteropatriarchal idea of
Yep,
what social movements look like,
yeah.
then it's not real activism.
Then it's not real
you know
activism.
so I
And that,
think, yeah,
go
so
ahead, go
i
ahead.
so I think, to be honest, like, all of us that have studied Latino politics from the perspective of, subaltern Latino politics, you know are actually really well equipped, theoretically and conceptually,
Mm-hmm.
to take on this new age of political life, because
Yeah.
we've already been engaged, like you said, the Kathy Cohens. I mean, I don't know what kind of books were we reading. You were reading grad school. You had an undergrad taking
Mm-hmm.
graduate school classes. So
Yeah.
let
Or
me
just
tell
one.
you who the smart kid was, right? But we were reading, about Black public spheres,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Melissa Harris Perry, and
Right.
and all of those important Black feminist scholars, Patricia
Yes.
Hill
Yeah.
Collins, all these folks that were telling us, like, actually, you have to broaden your conceptual apparatus of what politics is,
Right.
or else you're going to really miss, you know, the iceberg. You're just gonna see
Right.
the
You're
top
just
of
gonna
it
see the top. Right.
and political behavior versus like the kind of cultural politics where identities form,
Right.
where identities are contested, et cetera, on the bottom.
Yeah.
So I want to do something though for those who have joined. I'm gonna ask you guys a question. Can I do that, Claudia?
Of course. This is your space, girl.
Okay. So this is the question I have. Okay. So okay, where we are now is a little bit, just to give you an update of where we are now in terms of thinking about Latinos online, right?
Yeah.
So, so you've heard of like the concept of the digital divide,
Right. Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody kind of accepts that. And I think you that have worked with Kathy Cohen at University of Chicago, and the Black Youth Project, probably know this better than folks that are just kind of not sort of steeped in the literature. But I think the digital divide is people accept it as common sense. Okay,
Yeah.
there is a digital divide.
Right.
But a lot of studies have come out that have said, hey, let's complicate this idea that Latinos, lag way behind, whites in
Mm-hmm.
terms of online, getting,
Their online presence. Yeah.
yeah. So where we are now is basically like, yes, absolutely, income matters in terms of broadband access, in terms of
Right.
desktop computers, but in terms of like cell phones, Latinos are, just as, have just as similar rates of
Right.
having this technology as other ethnic and racial groups,
Yeah.
and in fact, are really changing like the ways in which we think of online sort of participation. And when it comes to youth, it's even more kind of acute in terms of like Black, this study that Cohen and Kahn put out like
Mm-hmm.
8 years ago said, hey, actually, when it comes to youth, Black, Latino, Asian, and white youth, all have almost similar percentage of online
Yeah.
engagement when it comes to political and social issues,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So we're in a weird space where it's like we have to obviously understand that there is certain gaps, absolutely, when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
like wealth, income, and how that maps onto like
Yeah.
technological acquisition and things like that. But then there's other ways, especially amongst youth, in terms of how they're engaging online and how they're leveraging those communicative networks
Yeah.
towards social and civic purposes that aren't necessarily just institutional engagement.
Yeah.
But I have a question for those that are on here right now. Okay, so we're gonna do a little quiz.
Let's do it.
Okay, so this is uh, a Pew Research Center study, which I love, the Pew Research Center.
Yeah, I
Okay,
use Pew Research Center for everything.
for everything. Yeah, for everything. By the way, I had a peer review of an article recently,
Uh-huh.
and they were like, you use the Migration Policy Institute and Pew too
The Pew
much. And I'm
Research
like,
Center.
what do you want
How
me
do
to
you
do?
use it too much?
You use it
That's
too
their
much.
work. They have all this data for us.
Not exactly. Not only that, but like, yeah. So anyhow, okay, so in terms of the 4 or 5 big platforms, right? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and LinkedIn. Okay, so I'll repeat those. Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram.
Okay.
Which ones would you all guess? Well, I already said the first one at the top. And mind you, I don't have any prizes for any of you all, so sorry. But okay, what is the highest engagement? What is the highest social media platform engagement amongst Latinos? What are
Amongst
your guesses?
Latinos, I
Yeah,
actually
don't say it.
see.
Let people write it.
A ver. Let's see, folks. What do
Are
you
people
think?
guessing?
Social media.
Look at
Oh, you know what?
Joanna.
The
Look at
comments lag.
Joanna.
The comments lag a little bit. Okay, so
Oh,
just kind of
oh.
Facebook for Latinos. Facebook.
Shout out the best student I've ever had right there.
Girl, you can't say that. What if you have other students coming on?
I say it to all of them. Sandra knows. Sandra knows.
I know. IG. Okay, so
I'm just kidding.
Facebook,
Sandra knows.
Facebook, Facebook.
Okay, okay.
El
Oh,
Face,
el
El
face.
Face, El Facebook.
Okay, okay, fine. You guys are so smart. Screw you guys. Okay. You're correct. You're correct.
It's Facebook.
Facebook is by far. Oh, um, you
What is
Claudia
it?
Claudia requested this
Oh yes,
actually.
yes. Wait. Before you give an answer, is this what I thought? Was that handoff what I think it is?
Yes, porque tú me dijiste que I needed
Yes.
to do a drink.
Yes, you need to
So
do a drink. So as some of you guys know, like when I do these, I'm like, we need a drink. This needs to be a drink session. I haven't had a drink in a minute because it's like during the
my
day.
Starbucks.
But Annalie's dad is amazing.
He's a
Blows your
mixologist.
mind with the
All
drinks
right,
that
so
he
let
made.
me show you what he's doing right now. Hold on. They
Hi.
can't hear you or anything. So he's gonna.
I love it.
This is a first. This is a first. So I don't know
I
what
love
he's
it,
making.
girl. Once this pandemic is over, we're gonna have a get together where your dad is the bartender. My dad is
the musician.
Is the musician.
I think they're gonna fall in love. Yeah.
Yes.
It looks so good, you guys.
Sorry, guys. Arelia and I are having a moment.
I know. Sandro's like, what's happening right now?
I love this.
So what are you making? Dude, I'm getting maraschino cherries in here. I'm getting bitters. And honestly, it's like way too early for me to have a drink. It's like 3:30.
That's the point. That's the point.
Okay. So he wants to show you the
girl.
Girl, look at this.
Can I have it?
Oh my God. Let me see. What is it though? He wants me to guess what it is. It's some kind of sour. Is it
For sure it's a sour.
It's like a mezcal sour? No. A gin sour?
No.
Pisco sour. Pisco sour. Shoot. My taste buds. Jesus, the drama. I love it.
Contratado, girl. Like, this pandemic is over. It's the first thing we're doing.
Okay, so you guys were right.
Okay,
so it doesn't say so.
Thank you, Annalise Dan.
This is it doesn't distinguish between youth and adults. But you guys are right. Instagram, I believe, is the #1 platform for Latino youth, for Latinx youth, right? Okay, what's the next one?
But overall for Latinos, it's Facebook.
Overall, it's Facebook, right?
Okay.
Okay, so what would you guys guess would be the lowest for Latinos?
Can I guess too?
Yes, you can guess.
Annalise that for the win. That's right. Cheers. I have a bottle of water. Cheers.
Yo, and by the way, he was so not prepared for that. I called him and was like, you need to come and prepare me a drink. Okay. And he was like, so
but he was ready, girl. He was ready.
He was ready. Yo, he takes his mixer everywhere.
My bar is set for this.
Okay,
right, I love it.
Cool Chick says, okay.
Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest. This one's harder.
Sandro, okay. Oh, you guys are good. Okay. All right, are you ready? Okay.
I would say LinkedIn.
You guys, okay, Joanna, whoever said LinkedIn, correct. Okay, that is the lowest, LinkedIn. Right? And then Pinterest is the second lowest. And I don't have it in front of me. But Pinterest is actually one of the highest for white women.
Really? Well, because that also seems like a marketing
sort of marketing kind of like what color are your drapes? You know, like I want to do a kitchen remodel.
Yes, girl, that's where I would go for my remodeling. Questions.
So the top 3 for Latinos are Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Okay, when it comes to Black folks, that is also Facebook, but not as high.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram is also up there. Both Black and Latinos have similar rates of use on Twitter, which is really interesting because most folks think, when they think of Twitter, and really who really keeps Twitter going in terms of it's Black Twitter, right? I mean, in terms of Black Twitter and its association with BLM, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
is effectively like, but Latinos, so
Twitter just seems like a complicated platform, right? We were talking about this right when we were when
I
I was
told you to get
giving you
on
the
Twitter.
yeah, you're like you need a Twitter, and like that's the one platform I'm not interested in joining. Because I already have access to it as not like a non-member, right? I can go
Yeah,
to
you don't
somebody's
have to be a
Twitter,
member.
like you don't need it. But
How
I
many of you guys are Twitter users?
yeah, how many people here are Twitter
So
users?
so this is the really interesting thing about Twitter, right? So if I were to say, okay, you have two people, right? And you have to guess, you have to be the social scientist here and guess what social media platform they use. Okay, I'll give you okay. I won't give you their ethnicity. I'll just be like, one is a man, age 42, lives in the South, and is more politically conservative, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other is academic Twitter.
Mm.
The other is a young, sort of young 35 woman, right? More socially progressive, kind of thinks of herself as a feminist. In the first, in the first, in the first one, the socially
Yeah.
conservative, more socially conservative leaning, uh, a middle-aged man from the South, what platform do you think he would most likely be on? Like his number one kind of social media platform, one or
I
two.
would say Facebook.
Facebook is up there for
Yeah.
most of us, but it's honestly Reddit. Reddit and
Oh yeah, yeah,
4chan,
yeah. Right. That's right. Yes,
right?
yes, yeah. That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And with Twitter, what's interesting is that it's younger and it's actually more socially progressive than
Mm-hmm.
the general public.
Right.
Um, so it's really interesting how these platforms have kind of lent themselves to, like when you think of 4chan and Reddit, you just think of like misogynists, right?
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
really like appropriated the platform to their ends. But
Yeah.
I guess so. But I think so. How much time? So we don't. But what I wanted to get across with this thing is that the first major thing I wanted to say is that for all of us that are on here right now, obviously we're engaging in a kind of this is very meta because what we're doing is we're using social media to engage in a kind of social, like to raise social consciousness, to
Yeah.
talk about a kind of social and political issue, etc.
Yeah.
The paradox of that is if Latinos are, especially Latino youth, are just as engaged, right, online, um, are driving a lot of the use on these social media platforms. And then, the paradox, or some people would say the paradox would be, okay, but in 2016, the voting population didn't like decline by a lot, but it
Yeah.
was a little bit of a decline,
Yeah.
right, from the previous election.
Right.
Um,
It
and
was significant about among Black voters, though.
it was significant amongst Black voters. In general, we had a decline amongst Latino and Black
Right.
voters in 2016.
Yeah.
Um, and then you go, okay, so one or two of the things that I ponder, and the reason I wanted to talk about these things is, to be honest with you, I'm working on a manuscript that has nothing to do with this, but this is
Mm-hmm.
kind of what I'm fascinated with in the moment, which is like, while I'm doing this, my dad's like, let everybody know this pisco sour is fantastic. Pisco.
You know
He's
what?
like,
I need him to be the bartender for all of my IG
all of
lives.
your lives. I love it.
For all
So,
of my guests.
so this is the thing, right? It's like, okay, so there's my girl Ray. Shout out. So the question then becomes like, how is it that we're understanding this, right? We've always known that Latinos engage, all the reasons why Latinos don't engage with institutional politics.
Mm-hmm.
Everything from the systemic forms of exclusion, to the lack of kind of belief that they can actually change things through institutional means,
Yeah.
etc. But then at the same time, if we think about all of the ways that in the last, even in the last 5 years, in the ways that Latinos become super active via social media
Mm-hmm.
around issues of social issues. So just yesterday, if those of you who are on Twitter, Latinx was trending it was over 38,000 to 40,000 tweets yesterday, which is
On
a
the term
lot
Latinx?
on the term Latinx was
Okay.
trending yesterday. And it had to
Okay.
do with the Emmy nominations, right? And
Mm.
there was this so okay, so when you look at that, you go, well, that's not politics. Well, actually, it's deeply political, right?
Right.
Because it's about
Absolutely.
identities, it's about coalition building, and really it was around because John Leguizamo
That
and
I saw that and I wasn't sure what it was about because I don't follow like Emmys and like the whole like
Emmy nominations.
awards, yeah, like or any of the awards. So I saw that he had said something about like that there were no Latino nominations,
He
right? And
said,
like a
"I want
whole,
some piece of the pie" after the nominations, and
yes, yeah, yeah, that's right,
there
that's
is
right.
a Latina, Afro Latino who was nominated, but
Yes.
overall, Pose was shut out. There wasn't any nominations for One Day. What's that
One day at a time.
sitcom that has One Day at a Time? I think. Um, no nominations for Viva, and so
Mm.
some, and I think Dasha Polanco, who is I think Afro, I don't know, she's
Afro Latina,
Dominican or
right?
Puerto Rican,
So I don't know. I don't know any of this. I just read about it. But
right,
yes, the collabo that he or she, I don't know who they are, identifies
right,
as Afro Latina. But then
right.
they also said that part of the problem was that the Black community doesn't take up the Latino exclusion
That the
issue.
Latino doesn't take up the Black exclusion issue,
Oh, I read
right?
that opposite.
Or both. Yeah, I guess we're reading in both. But there was all of this, and and I got into a little bit of a back and forth with India, more not back and forth, but just like a really cool discussion
Yeah,
about this because. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that that's deeply political, right? Because it's
absolutely.
about white supremacy. It's about discussing oppression Olympics, like my mentor, Dr. Anne Hancock talks about,
Right.
that it very much felt when John Leguizamo spoke, like, hey, I want some of the piece of the pie for Latinos too. And the backlash was, hey, some of the common critiques, hey, Latinos are anti-Black, so they don't have legitimacy in making claims, which
Right.
is a really interesting kind of um, argument. And
Yeah.
two, right, like people, India Moore was like, y'all Hispanics, y'all deal with your anti-Blackness before you start talking about, right? So that's an
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing. And two, what does it mean for Latinos to actually have the claims about
Mm-hmm.
representation?
Right.
And so I guess my point is that these are deeply political issues.
Mm-hmm.
The other more recent situation with Goya Foods,
Oh,
right,
right. Right.
is another way that it's another form of cultural politics in
Yeah.
which, I mean, I think Goya was trending for at least 3 days,
Yeah.
2 to 3 days, right?
Right. Right.
After the Bob Unanue, I don't know how to
I
pronounce
don't
his name,
know. Yeah.
the
But
president
after he
of,
made those comments,
right, and
Trump,
and
yeah.
and in Ivanka, the daughter, held up the Goya also through social media,
Yeah,
right?
right. Which was
And
politically, like, given their political positions, was actually like not something that they were allowed to do, right? Like, you can't
correct, they're
promote.
investigating. You cannot do that, and they're
Yeah.
investigating it. So there was in what ways, and I'm curious for the folks that have joined, in what ways were people dealing with that, right? In what ways did people respond besides hashtagging? Um, like I saw different things. For example, I saw people immediately share recipes online
Yeah.
and via SMS
Sazon
about.
recipes were like trending también for
They're like,
me.
don't worry, do not worry,
You
do
got
not
everything you
panic.
need.
I've got you.
Yeah.
Alternative brands, right?
Yeah.
Alternative consumption practices. Um, Freddie said, me too. I did that.
Hmm.
And so we have to account for those things,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
If we just focus on institutional politics, we're not focusing on really the ways in which Latinos speak up, right,
Yeah.
about their identities, the way that they feel they're being harmed, the way that they're kind of showing forms of solidarity with others,
Hmm.
etc. And then there's all other, I want to talk about two other instances of kind of these kind of cultural politics that play out online.
Hmm.
Several years ago, do you guys remember the Not My Abuela hashtag
With Hillary Clinton.
with Hillary Clinton,
Yes.
right?
Who
And I
can
talk about
forget?
this. I talk about this in my classes, right? How could we, right? So that was an immediate response. Many Latinas, right, were the ones that like took up to the hashtag not like my abuela.
Can you explain
Um,
that a little bit, just if somebody
well,
doesn't remember what that was
well,
about?
well, well, it was when Hillary, I think, was running for the 2016
Yeah.
presidency, and and it really gets back to more and more political scientists that are studying this are saying are saying that Trump expanded the electorate by bringing folks that have been marginal, blah blah blah, white,
Yeah.
supremacists basically out to vote,
Right.
and others are saying Hillary as a candidate was really, sort of not inspiring turnout,
Yeah.
clearly among
Yeah.
Blacks and Latinos.
Right.
And that was one of the expressions of that, right? So of course she hires probably, and mind you, we know folks that the Clinton campaign hires to do their Latino political consulting, but I don't
Right.
know this particular political consultant. They should hire us, girl, because we
I
wouldn't have
know.
done that.
That's what I'm saying.
Hillary,
I'll tell you how to do this.
Hillary is, they did this whole multimedia campaign, right, in which they talked about Clinton being just like your abuela. And it literally listed all of the ways Hillary was like your abuela, right?
Yeah.
And I think what made that hashtag particularly explosive was that it was folks with social capital online, particularly Latinas that were part of different organizations, really spoke up and started the hashtag not like my abuela, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just became a meme, right? Because a lot of
Yeah.
people don't, a meme, people are like, well, what is a meme? A meme is just that, is an artifact that you can spread, right? That
Right.
you can spread and that acquires, it's intertextual and it acquires a significance as it moves through these different media platforms.
Yeah.
So that was obviously more political in the sense of like the Goya foods too was in response to what Trump was saying in terms of the Goya thing.
Right.
But obviously hashtag not one more. But then there are hashtags that you look in which Latinos, especially young Latinos, engage, and they're not really, they don't have explicit political content,
Right.
right? The
Hmm.
Latinx thing was about nominations, but I don't know how many of you kind of follow these kind of stuff. But for example, some of my not favorites, but the ones that I get shared, people share a lot with me is hashtag Latinos be like,
I don't
so
know.
it'll be like Hispanic hashtag Latino parents,
Oh, okay.
Latino
Okay.
mothers,
Okay.
La Chancla,
Yes.
memes about La
Yeah.
Chancla.
Yes.
Um,
Did you see that video I posted the other day?
which one?
About the guy, like this guy who acts like a mom, like a Mexican mom.
I think I've seen it. Yeah,
Did
I've
you
seen
see
it.
it? And then he like goes, he's like, hijo de la chingada, ya levántate, sé que estás en vacaciones or whatever, right? And it was like, I tagged my mom, and my mom was like, what was that about? I'm like, it sounds just like you.
It sounds just like no. It's something that we can all kind of It's very similar to what Black Twitter did with Thanksgiving clapback,
Mm-hmm.
which literally around Thanksgiving I was so excited not about the turkey, but about Black Twitter doing Thanksgiving clapback because
Mm.
it was an alternative take on what Thanksgiving was like.
Looks like, yeah.
And then what's interesting is that these kind of culture expressions online then get taken up by larger media outlets because the SNL did a skit once many years ago of white folks around for the Thanksgiving table when they realized that some of Beyonce's music that she had put out at the time, I think it was Lemonade, the album, I don't remember,
Okay.
but
Uh-huh.
it had subliminal kind of anti-racist messages.
Uh-huh.
And SNL, I don't know if y'all remember who are on the chat, but there was this white family who then becomes aware that Beyonce is actually black. And they have like an identity crisis, like a crisis about their fandom. So,
Yeah.
so there are ways in which these kind of grassroots expressions around, and then your point about Hispanic mothers be like,
Yeah.
Dominicans be like, I mean, there's every national, Saudis be like, Mexicans be like, and that we
Yeah.
can all relate to, right? Because they function according to different cultural codes.
Yeah.
Because I think some of them are like, oh, I'm going to send my kid to therapy. And like the Hispanic mom is like, therapy? I'm just, like chanca or whatever, some
Yeah.
kind of
You
thing.
don't need therapy. You just need
Yeah,
andar.
yeah. What you need is to help me clean.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I think like in terms of for those like there's like three there's like cultural jamming, which happens a lot online, which is this idea that, you take kind of corporate symbols, hegemonic corporate symbols, and kind of remix that, right, with a
Mm.
particularly anti-capitalist thing. So like Legalize LA is one that you remember how everyone was doing the Legalize LA shirts.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, there's all kinds of ways in which folks remix different messages. And the thing is that these forms of participation, like people will say, oh, social media millennials, it's something new,
yeah.
right? But we know that have been studying politics for decades is really not new.
Right.
Latinos have been engaged in boycotting, obviously the great boycotts, the
Yeah.
Coors boycott, um, the Frito Lay. Do you guys remember the
I don't
Frito
remember
Lay
Frito
dude?
Lay.
So of course, like it was before our time, but Frito Lay used to use like really racist like image like of the lazy Mexican with the
With the
mustache and the
mustache, the sleepy Mexican.
the sleepy Mexican. Well, actually, that one was like Frito Bandito, I think it was called.
Oh,
Frito
okay.
Bandito. So it's really
Mhm.
interesting because with the Black Lives Matter stuff, like, you get so within a week, right? Like the Black Lives Matter protests all around, and then all of a sudden people are like Aunt Jemima's canceled. And I'm like, I thought Aunt Jemima had actually been canceled decades
Long
before.
ago.
I did
Yeah,
not know that is it Uncle Ben and Aunt Jemima and all these kind of racist caricatures were still
yeah,
being used um, to sell product, right?
yeah, yeah,
But not a lot of people know or even really recognize these forms of like frito banditos, right? That are
yeah.
also racialized, right?
Right,
And
right.
but that that Latinos have been engaging, I guess. What I'm saying is that they've been engaging in these forms of boycott. Now with network communication, these these are the new tools, right? That
Yeah,
mediate those forms of engaging in cultural politics or not even cultural politics, in politics, because I
yeah.
would say a boycott is political, right? It
Right,
hits at the
right.
heart of systemic inequality and things like that.
I mean, it
So
gets to kind of like the conversation that I was having with Jonathan and you. I think you were listening in on that one,
I was.
Jonathan Rosa, about like his kind of understanding of like new forms of activism that kind of take on like this is new, and it's like, well, it's not really new. Sometimes like it's taking on a new format and it looks differently because now we can use the internet, we can use a sphere that wasn't available a few years ago. But we've been talking about these issues and we've been trying to dismantle these institutions way before it became a thing. So like BLM and the protest is not a new struggle, right? Like this isn't like all of a sudden people are mad about racism. It's like, no, it's like the culmination of years, decades of fighting and working on
Mhm.
grassroots organizing to get people out on the streets. And it's happened here and there, right? But it's like it culminates in a moment, and it shouldn't be thought of as new or a new moment or a new revolution. It's like people have been um fighting for these rights or these things for a long time. But I want to, because it cuts off in an hour, so we have like
Yeah,
about
I know, I
15
know.
minutes. I want us to talk about like kind of wrapping all of this up, because I think with the work that you're doing, you're using this term called transmedia testimonials, right? Which is like clearly talking about how does the internet uh, work as a political strategy. And I'm kind of using your words from your work. Um, it that the transmedia testimonials are a political strategy for the subaltern, right? To really dismantle hegemonic hegemonic narratives,
Narrative, yeah.
power structures, abuse of power,
Yeah.
state power in particular. So
Yeah.
take us
It
through
it's
that,
no,
because I think that's really powerful.
I mean, it speaks directly. I mean, I think that piece was published, I think, in 2016, and it's crazy how much in 4 years the discourse around empowerment and social media has changed.
Yeah,
Um, and it's not to say that the things that were going on a couple years ago weren't happening 4 years ago in terms of
yeah,
the mental health issues, um, the harassment, particularly the misogyny, anti-blackness, and misogyny that happens online, the ways in which these platforms don't protect, marginalized communities and marginalized people. So there's other risks, but I think it speaks directly to what you were saying, right, earlier, which is so the reason why I was inspired to write that was because of some of the folks that have joined us today, which were, folks that were young people. Some of them were dealing with different legal statuses, right, and different relationships to legality, and were inspired to talk openly about their experiences online. And the transmedia part actually comes directly from the concept is really a synthesis. And the way I conceptualized it was a syncretic repertoire, right? So the ways in which social movements syncretize different repertoires of contention, right? So like the undocumented youth using coming out, right, as a metaphor, right? And so a lot of people were talking about coming out, and there was this one piece, I think it was published in the Washington Post by an immigrant rights dude that some of you here might be familiar with, Frank Sherry. He published a piece where he was like, undocumented folks need to learn from queer and gay liberation movements, and he really like ahistoricized and really like made it seem as if there weren't queer folks really pushing undocuqueers,
right,
and actually syncretizing these repertoires of contention, right, and saying, look, this has worked, and this has worked in this space, right, around issues of sexuality. I'm transferring these strategies over to the immigrant rights movement, transferring strategies of contention, right, of calling out your supposed allies publicly, which are things that undocumented youth, and there's a couple manuscripts in progress and about to come out and be published in this year, next year, not mine, but others that kind of focus on this. So the idea of Transmedia Testimonio was really an attempt, and what I aim to do is say, look, these strategies, movement strategies, even though they're using network communication, social and new media, they're not new strategies, and they're actually rooted in a very long history of subaltern politics in Latin America, right? Of speaking truth to power and things of that nature. Because talking about coming out online as if it was something spontaneous and not strategic.
Yeah.
This was a strategic, intervention that undocumented youth did, and that was the kind of purpose behind that article. But I think what I when I have a chance to circle back around, to that, I think one of the major things that we have to deal with, not just as scholars, but like activist scholars and folks out in the field, is like, what are we going to do now about the rise of neo-fascism and the ways in which neo-fascism is using social media, right? So a couple of things have just come out in the last couple of days that I want to point you guys to. One is the Pew just published another thing, and on Americans and social media, and the Washington Post has a couple pieces on it today, and then the 4 big tech companies, had to testify in Congress today, right? And so as all that stuff is converging around this talk that we're having today, which is a couple things that come out that we already kind of knew, but the data is now really proving, is that conservative folks are 4 times more likely to share fake news online, particularly on Facebook, right? And that Facebook itself, right, this report by Media Matters came out that showed that Facebook allowed Trump to run 2,000 ads describing immigrants, particularly Central Americans. Bye, Krichik. Thank you.
Bye, kids.
That described
like kids.
immigrants as Central Americans as, but so we are, okay. And then there's been other instances. Bolsonaro was, such a tragic thing that happened in Brazil. My progressive friends out there, they specifically used a multi-million-dollar campaign on WhatsApp, right? To share false and fake news about the progressive candidate, right? And we saw immediately the kind of destruction that happened with Bolsonaro, immediately with the fires, the
Yeah.
Amazon fires,
Yes.
and the COVID cases that are out of control in Brazil.
Yeah.
And so what you're seeing is what's happening here, what's happening in other authoritarian regimes, where the actual regime uses social media to create such a chaos of conspiracy, and it makes people less trusting of verified news sources.
Yeah.
So what you're having is a polarization, right, in which conservatives are now getting almost, and this is another crazy thing, Latinos, right, are really, really vulnerable, because I think a majority of Latinos get their news from social media,
Yeah.
not from print, or not even from local TV news. Like the Univisiones of the
Univision.
world are starting to, they've started to sell to larger corporate media
Yeah.
folks,
Yeah.
right? And so when you have younger, less, access to education, less forms of digital literacy, you have a very vulnerable population
Yeah.
to conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And not just conspiracy. This is so Claudia, I'm scared is my point.
I know, but I just want to say, did you kind of like call the United States an authoritarian regime?
There's just no question about it. I mean, there's no question. And the things that we saw with immigration prior to this, like, it's always the question of when they go after immigrants, when they started marking Jewish folks with in ways and ghettoizing Jewish people, you knew what was coming. It was enabling other forms of oppression. And so we've been seeing, as immigration scholars, we've already been knowing this, right?
Right.
I think the for me, the scary thing is that this is happening on a global scale.
Right.
And so the question for me is, okay, I wrote a couple pieces, admiring the innovation that people of color and youth of color are using on social media. But then you're really seeing that these have sold themselves to the devil. And in fact, maybe they were never, Facebook was never, it was a way to, to spy on quote unquote hot chicks. It was a misogynist tool created by, right? And then you have all these, like, quote unquote liberals coming after cancel culture, right? Yeah. So as people of color, we're getting it from both sides. We're getting it from the authoritarian fascists, who are creating such chaos in the world of misinformation that now you have over, we're heading towards 200,000 deaths. Yeah. Right? Easily. Because people do not understand what is happening. Yeah. And then on the other hand, you have these quote unquote liberals. And that's why we have always suspected and have always been wary of liberals, right? Yeah. Because then you have liberals coming out at this time, out of all times, in the middle of one of the largest manifestations and mobilizations for Black lives and for racial justice. You have folks like Noam Chomsky and the TERF lady, I forget her name, J.K. Rowling. Oh, J.K. Rowling. And all these liberals coming out and saying, what I'm worried about is cancel culture. Well, shit, You shouldn't have let me take this drink, girl.
I love it. Girl, next time you're on.
But I think...
No, go ahead.
But I think what my point in saying all this is that as scholars, as activists, as people that are engaged in the world, like, we really need to figure this out. Yeah. Right? Like, what are we going to do? Like neo-fascism is here. It's not, it's here. And now,
the best indication of that is just like that fake news conference by Breitbart, right? Like, what was that? And not just what was that, but I could not believe how many people shared that belief. Like, truly, like, these are heroes. Right. Like, they're telling us the truth. And I literally almost lost it because I just couldn't believe.
Well, see, this is the thing, right? And this is the crazy thing. And that's why I need you to be on Twitter, because you learn so much about how this works. They create chaos, because think about it. Fake news, it's happening simultaneously. The same reason why we have been able to use social media in terms of mobilization on the streets is because things can happen, simultaneously, offline, online, etc. Yeah. But when it's fake news, I'll be honest, it's happened to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When I've shared something and someone's clapped back and said, "Hey, did you verify that?" Yeah. Did you verify that? Right. And so Claudia, we're at a really, we need all hands on deck to
Yeah.
figure this out because, like I said, Latinos are more vulnerable to this kind of, malarkey.
I love it. I love it. Let's and so wrapping it up with malarkey.
I can't believe I just said.
I love it. I love that you said that. Wrapping it up to this chaos, I hope that because we have like 2 minutes left, to 3 minutes left. Well, actually, let me leave it up to you. Is that how you want to end it, or is there something that you want to say to kind of wrap it all up?
No, I do want to end. I want to say thank you for having me on. I'm
Loved it.
excited for you to keep doing this. I want to use this space like in my classroom in the fall,
Please
maybe
do.
assign them to get on. I'm happy to come back.
Yes.
Like if this is a tryout, I wasn't sure if this was a tryout period of like if you're looking for a co-host, but I
Girl,
hope that
if it comes with the bartender, I'm down. I'm just kidding. I'm totally
uh,
down for that.
Claudia's
No,
like, you have not let me say a word. You have not let me say a word this whole time. So shout out Liz and Mel. Like, hello. But no, for real, this has been really, I honestly, straight up, like, I encourage everyone, to spread the word about your Instagram.
oh, I appreciate
Hopefully we'll get you on Twitter. Don't go on
that.
Pinterest
No.
because then you're apparently a white affluent lady.
I'm a lifestyle coach after that. But no, I
Exactly.
appreciate it. I appreciate it.
The next, thank you, Chris and Jackie. Love you guys.
Yes, thanks so much everybody for joining us. Thank you, Arely.
Nice to see you.
I'm definitely gonna have you back on at some point. And
Wait, because the next one we can do a cocktail and
yes, and
a
send it over.
cocktail and we'll just maybe when the elections happen down the line, we'll talk about what happened.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that. But please do share this with your classes. It's obviously, super
Thank you,
relaxed
Sandra.
and we talk about other things as well. But I definitely, if even students, right? If they can learn from like the conversations that we're having in a relaxed setting, I hope that people are sharing it. So that they can kind of see like what do academic friends talk about. But yes, this
We
will be
never talk about
recorded.
this, girl. We never talk about this. Well, we
I
did.
know. Well, sometimes.
I'm like,
It will be
Claudia,
recorded.
fascism. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, people are saying, will we be recording?
Yes, so it goes on to my Instagram page. So Arely's will be on in about like 5 minutes. It takes a minute for it to
I'll
download.
download it and like edit out everything,
You
like a
can't
lot of
edit.
this shit. I'll
You,
edit out the malarkey part.
you can't edit though. But please go onto the Instagram page and there's, like I mentioned before, there's like 6 or 7 different interviews that I've done so far. So please check them out. If you guys are interested, we talk about things from Black immigrants to racism, the meaning of racism
Yo,
globally.
you've had some amazing guests.
Yes,
Amazing guests.
yes. Thank you. I
Okay,
know.
I will make things shareable. I will make things shareable. And what else I going to tell you? One last thing. Oh yeah,
We have
and
1
then
minute.
message me any questions, any thoughts. Like I'm really I'm I'm really interested in
Why you look so cute though?
folks. If people are flirting with me on Instagram, it's all right. No, yeah, send me questions or any thoughts on this because I do think, yeah, this is going to be a line of research I'll pursue, after I get this book done. So,
All right, super
thank you all.
interesting. Thank you guys. Hopefully I'll
Ciao.
see you all
Thank you,
next
Claudia.
week. Thank you.
All right. Now, who's on
Bye.
next week? Who's on next week?
Oh, Ivy, it's Ivy Melgar Cargile from Cal State San Bernardino. She actually just came out with a co-edited volume on Hillary Clinton. So we'll be talking about her book and some of the work that she does on Black Latino relations as well. So we'll have lots to talk about next week as well.
All right. Bye,
All right,
y'all.
guys.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.